and the statement says the government should not be able to control the independent media that covers it. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I think that a small group of journalists who comprise the board of the White House Correspondents Association should not dictate who gets to go into the Oval Office and who gets to ride on Air Force One. There should be equal access for all outlets, and that's exactly what we're doing. And if we were trying, by the way, to create positive press for the president, if we were trying to make it easier on him or on the administration, we wouldn't allow some of these fake news leftist outlets in, but we continue to do that. No one has been restricted. We've just given more spots to more outlets and more voices. It's not about ideology. It's just about increasing the wide variety of outlets that have access. And we live in a digital age, and we're recognizing that at the White House. The president ran a non-traditional media campaign which propelled him back to the highest office in the land, and we felt it was our responsibility to continue that in our coverage at the White House.
Smart brevity. What is the one word that you would use to describe the media?
The media right now, exhausted and busy, because we're keeping them very busy.
And as you think about the 100 days, that milestone coming up Tuesday, what's the one word that you would use to describe President Trump's mood, approach, setting?
He is in...
The MAGA movement is fundamentally built on hypocrisy. The type of hypocrisy that allows Donald Trump or Carolyn Levitt to say that they love free speech while locking up college students for writing an op-ed or peacefully protesting. The type of hypocrisy that allows Carolyn Levitt to ban the AP from the White House press pool, all because they won't use the Gulf of Mexico's preferred pronouns that Donald Trump changed. It is absolutely ridiculous. And it is what Carolyn Levitt was called out to her face over in a public interview. Yes, people were watching it. And Carolyn Levitt wasn't happy. And that is why we are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way. And it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into Levitt being called out to her face in that interview that I talked about first, we got to get the context, which is Caitlin Collins asking Carolyn Levitt about her banning the AAP, and this clip right here.
Final thing for you, which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus. Many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the Geographical Identification Name Server. And Apple has recognized that, Google has recognized that, pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America, and it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world.
Like I said, this is the hypocrisy of MAGA, and how Carolyn Levitt likes to frame it is that they're actually allowing in more transparency, because we're hearing different voices in the news, and really it's just conservative hacks and propagandists. And that's the line MAGA media always delivers, that the mainstream media is always on the same talking point that favors Democrats. First of all, That's not true. But when has the MAGA media ever not delivered the same talking point? All they do is push propaganda for Donald Trump. Sometimes they're paid for it, and sometimes they're paid for it by the Russians, as we've seen with Tim Pool, who is just at a White House press briefing. So don't give me any of this BS, but it is that BS that led the AP to sue Carolyn Levitt. And of course, we got to check that out before we get to her being confronted to her face about that lawsuit and her hypocrisy a few weeks ago. The Associated Press sued 3 Trump administration officials after being barred from some White House events and spaces, citing a violation of the First and Fifth Amendment. The lawsuit, filed in federal district court in Washington, comes after over a week of the White House punishing the AP for not changing its guidelines on the Gulf of Mexico, which Donald Trump calls the Gulf of America. So Carolyn Levitt was hit with a personal lawsuit from the AP, and clearly she still hasn't gotten over those angry feelings. But she was asked about it today at an event with Axios around the White House Correspondents Association dinner. And the answer she gave was just so nonsensical. We're going to check it out.
You've curtailed access to the Associated Press, which reaches half the world's population every day. The most definitive photo of President Trump, the fight, fight, fight photo after the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, was made by Evan Vucci, who's the chief photographer in Washington for the Associated Press. Do you worry about history being lost with these new restrictions?
I don't view them as restrictions. We view them as opening access to more outlets, more voices, more news journalists and outlets. We shouldn't have a few outlets who have a monopoly over the briefing room or over that 13-person press pool that covers the president. And so we've actually ensured that more print outlets, like Axios, have a greater chance of being part of that 13-person press pool. There are thousands of outlets who have White House press credentials. There are hundreds that actually show up every day and cover the beat. Why should a single outlet have the privilege of being in that 13-person press pool every single day? And so the changes we've made have actually created more transparency, more accessibility, and greater access for a broad variety of outlets and a diversity of journalists, which I think is a good thing. And we've seen that play out. I mean, we started this. I think you're all still getting your news, right? You're still hearing about what the administration is doing every single day because we have good journalists who are in that room covering the president every single time.
The counter to that is in a White House Correspondents Association statement about the White House changes to the position of wire services in the pool. And the statement says the government should not be able to control the independent media that covers it. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I think that a small group of journalists who comprise the board of the White House Correspondents Association should not dictate who gets to go into the Oval Office and who gets to ride on Air Force One. There should be equal access for all outlets, and that's exactly what we're doing. And if we were trying, by the way, to create positive press for the president, if we were trying to make it easier on him or on the administration, we wouldn't allow some of these fake news leftist outlets in, but we continue to do that. No one has been restricted. We've just given more spots to more outlets and more voices. It's not about ideology. It's just about increasing the wide variety of outlets that have access. And we live in a digital age, and we're recognizing that at the White House. The president ran a non-traditional media campaign which propelled him back to the highest office in the land, and we felt it was our responsibility to continue that in our coverage at the White House.
Smart brevity. What is the one word that you would use to describe the media?
The media right now, exhausted and busy, because we're keeping them very busy.
And as you think about the 100 days, that milestone coming up Tuesday, what's the one word that you would use to describe President Trump's mood, approach, setting?
He is a
You continue to see Levitt return to this narrative around transparency in the first couple of weeks of Donald Trump's administration. It was something that they went back to a lot when they were touting all of their fake accomplishments, saying that Donald Trump had answered so many more questions than Joe Biden had during the same period of his presidency. Now, some of that had to do with the fact that there were fewer reporters in the Oval Office during CO. So maybe that was That was part of the problem, but also because Donald Trump lies to a reporter when asked a question doesn't mean that constitutes an answer. If you just shovel lies out the door, that does not equate with transparency. That's just free-flowing BS, and it's so nonsensical that that's what Carolyn Levitt is leaning on for her justification of why she's directly attacking an organization for their refusal to call Donald Trump's Gulf of America by its stupid name. That's not even its actual name. It's just nonsense. And we've been seeing, of course, nonstop nonsense from the right-wing media, but it's picked up a little bit lately. And while they will say that, it's totally fine for Carolyn Levitt to not let the AP in. They're also themselves a little scared of certain media from the left Foxes, and Pete Buttigieg talked about that right here.
Like, it's all well and good for me to keep going on Fox News, and I will, although they don't seem to be inviting me as much lately. But, you know, a lot of...
He just called y'all pussy.
I like that.
Talk your shit. Talk your shit, Pete.
And then poor Pete. I mean, Mayor Pete is not exactly the one you send out to get the young bro crowd. I mean, you may as well send Dylan Mulvaney doing a makeup class and hope you can get more guys to watch.
Yeah, it's funny how he thought like growing the beard would somehow change everything. It didn't.
Make us forget.
Okay, we gotta.
The man is the best. He is the best at what he does. It's really difficult to compete with Pete. I certainly wouldn't want to try. I don't know who the man is. He's just bang on. He's just spot on. And we're going to keep elevating and trying to be like Pete on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.